Um, Good morning, everyone. I don't want to particularly comment on Millfields this morning. Um, I guess one of the things I've been thinking about over the weekend is what a extraordinarily strong case the BP disaster in the Gulf of Mexico makes for triple bottom line investing. And it's very interesting to see some of the mainstream thinking really shifting because, of course, BP is such an important constituent of so many people's pension schemes. Not at all on subject, but that's where you find my head this morning. I have had a quick chat to Roger before we started the session. Clearly, managed workspace and property management is a major option for a number of different organizations. Triple bottom line investment means thinking about the economic and social consequences of any investment decision, as well as obviously the financial return. And what we've seen in the marketplace is people trying to invest for value but focusing only on financial return and then getting caught out by the social or economic consequences. Come to think of it, I also heard of the woeful story of Bhopal on the radio this morning, and what is it, 26 years on, the people responsible have been slapped with a minor indiscretion. That's quite enough for me. I'll pass on to, I see Vicky has her hand up.
Thanks, Hugh. Good morning to everyone. I just wanted to lay out the agenda for today and just run through once again our format for this session. So just before we move to the Millfields film, which I hope you've all had a chance to look at already and maybe have a chat through with our buddy, before we do that, I just want us all to put our hands up and go around the room just to make sure we can all hear each other and to just check in and say where we're coming in from. After that, we'll go to watch the film from Millfields. We'll come back and Roger Pipe here from the Trust will give his pitch and talk through his balanced scorecard, and that gives us a chance to ask a few questions. After that, at about 20 past 10, maybe quarter to 11, we're going to move to breakout rooms for discussions. Now remember, as I move you to the room, it's a bit abrupt. You will suddenly appear in a room with about 6 or 7 other people, and we'll stay in these rooms for about 15 or 20 minutes, and that gives us a chance to really dig down into some of the issues around managed workspace, about hiring out rooms. We'll be brought back afterwards. I'll set a timer going while we're in the breakout room, so you'll see that ticking down. When that reaches 0 or thereabouts, just afterwards, I'm going to bring us all back, sweep all at once into the main room. Again, it happens rather abruptly, so be prepared for that. And we'll have a chance to feedback the questions that we spoke about, the issues that we discussed in our breakout rooms. After then, we'll have a break. Time to go for a quick cup of tea, and we'll come back and we'll have a Keeler pitching to us, and we'll have a chance to have some group discussion after that, but we won't be moving to the breakout rooms. So everybody, hands up. Let's go around the room once to introduce ourselves and say hello, and then we'll move to the film. So over to you, number 1. Herbert, I think it's you.
Good morning, everyone. Like I said on the note, I'm in York, and new place, and hopefully today will be a good session.
Hello everyone, yeah, Joel's here and ready and waiting. Hello everyone, it's Roger Pipe from Millfields Trust. Hopefully you can all hear me loud and clear.
Morning everyone, it's John from sunny Sunderland.
Hi, it's Chris from Leeds, Camberwell, ready to go?
Hi, this is Anne from Ormskirk.
Hi, this is Mel from Yorkshire. Looking forward to the session.
Hi, this is Sophie from the DTA in Yorkshire and Humber, and looking forward to it as well.
Hi everybody, it's Caroline from Dudley. Looking forward to the session too.
Hi Naomi. Unfortunately we couldn't get you there. I think it's a bit late to join, but if you could perhaps try the audio setup wizard, maybe we'll be able to hear you sort of a bit later when you looked at your sound settings.
Hi, Mike on the Isle of Wight here. Just apologies in advance to everyone. I'm having to leave the session probably just before it finishes, about 12 o'clock, but it should be good.
Hi everyone, it's Andy here from London. Looking forward to today because renting out space is something that we're trying to do at the moment, although it's not a commercial office premises, it's just a training room and stuff. But hopefully there'll be some good tips to take to the person responsible for that. Thank you.
Christine, it's your go. If you're having a problem with your mic, perhaps we can move on to Akila.
Hi, morning everyone. Looking forward to my presentation. Please be gentle with me. Thank you.
Okay, you've heard enough of me, so I'm going to put my hand down.
Everybody, this is Paul from Lewisham. Looking forward to an exciting session.
Hi, this is Neil in Sunderland. Looking forward to this session and David Cameron's speech to come.
Hi, Vicky here from South East London, just back from a camping trip in West Sussex. Glorious sunshine all day. I see it's another fine day today, so looking forward to the session.
Hi, Tony here from what you might laughingly call the beating heart of Reading. Looking forward to the session.
Hi, it's Hugh. I think we need to put a timer on this. It should be like a real relay race, and I think we ought to see if we can beat our previous time each week. What I want to know is whether Sophie got re-elected as chair of her Football International group in Leeds over the weekend. Sophie?
You got me laughing there, Hugh. Yes, I did. It was a very good election, and we've got a very good committee this year to take ourselves forward as a socialist football club in Leeds. Yeah, thank you.
Right, can I suggest that we go and watch the film now, and we'll join ourselves back in the room after a few minutes. So I've put the link up in the chat box. Let's all go to watch it now. I think we're almost all back. I can see that a couple of people are having trouble with the streaming footage. I think I'm going to suggest that we move on anyway, and that perhaps we can send them a link to a YouTube version of the film and they can have a look at it afterwards. And I hope that Roger's discussion and the discussion we have after his presentation will give them a good sense of the flavour, anyway, of Millfields. So before we move over to Roger, Hugh, is there anything you wanted to say just before I pass the mic over to Roger?
Thanks, Vicky. Just to say really welcome to Roger, one of, I think, of the sort of key anchor members of the DTA movement, very skilled in developing managed workspace in poor old Plymouth, which has suffered, like so many post-industrial cities, to reinvent itself. And Roger and the team at Millfields, I think, have played their part in that. And have managed that through establishing a series of very good relationships both with Plymouth City Council and with the RDA. So without further ado, really, over to Roger. We're lucky to have him with us this morning.
Good morning, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed the short film. I feel really under pressure now to deliver from that introduction and from all your comments about it being a good session. So hopefully you will get something out of this and find it useful. And I'm of course anxious to take all of your questions and answer them fully. We are a medium-sized organisation in terms of income, I guess, but in terms of staffing, I start with our advanced scorecard, perhaps on the organisational element to give you some background. We are relatively small, 6 members of staff, five of which are involved in running the operation, and 1 is involved in a project working with our local schools in terms of our social return. We're a company limited by guarantee, and we've been established for 11 years. We're not a charity, although we are looking to charitable registration. I'll be interested to talk to anyone about that later. We were formed as a result, as Hugh said, poor Plymouth, yes, and it was much poorer in the 90s. As a result mostly of the defence downsizing. And we started on the Millfields site, which is the overall Naval Hospital site, and because of the downsizing, that was part that downsided, and it was a part of an asset that became available, although at the time it wasn't really considered an asset. And it was valued by the Navy at about -4 million. So when that valuation was released, quite a few private developers said we'll have a bit of that, and as a result our City Council in their wisdom managed to get hold of some using structural funds that were available at the time, and secured some property on the site, which they subsequently then gave over to the Millfields Trust as a fledgling organisation. So we've been going for 11 years, as I said, a response to what can we do, let's provide jobs. Let's provide them through small businesses. When we started, none of us really knew anything about running businesses or business units. I certainly didn't, and a lot of our board didn't. We started with 3 staff in 1999, and we took over 30,000 square feet in 3 different buildings on the Millfields site, and have developed in 2 more phases since then. We moved subsequently to the HQ building, which was on the film, which was the building with the sort of silver outside, silver markings outside Silver HQ, and that subsequently was another 22,000 square feet. And we've built our own freehold building called Stonley Court on the Millfields site. In total, we have about 60,000 square feet. And as I think I said on the film, a range of tenants. The buildings are managed in a way that some have a central reception, and some are just all we provide is the maintenance service, really. That they're very independent little units with their own arrangements in terms of utilities, postage, etc. And really, we only they only call on us when there's a problem, if it's the bins or the maintenance issue. And so we've tried to respond, but they are really, little independent units. And one of the key things that we've learned over the years in running the units is that they provide us with a really good source of income, with relatively little management costs. And we haven't been needed to be dictatorial in terms of who goes in there. There's businesses are a complete range of units and a complete range of tenants. As to the size of the units vary from the smallest for about 200 square feet to the largest of 1,000 square feet. So the average size is about 700 square feet. We charge on average about £8 a square foot. Some are slightly cheaper, and you can interrupt me if you want. Sorry, I'll try and speak up a bit. We charge on average £8 a square foot. Some units are the most expensive we have are around about £9 a square foot. Right, as I say, the average is 8, so the lowest is 7. We recently built some light industrial units, which were such good quality that we charge around about £9 a square foot, which in Plymouth is amazing, really. Seems that they mostly go for around about £4 a square foot. So I think the lesson there is about quality and about size as well. You can see from the balanced scorecard that we're aiming to in our business model to generate financially £450,000 this year from income generated. So if you work out that we've got about 60,000 square feet, you can see that we're not aiming for many voids. Over the years, we've been really lucky in retaining high occupancy levels from our units. And down to a range of factors, not least of which is luck. I think when we started off, we didn't really have a clue as to what would go well, but it turns out that in Plymouth there was a real shortage of good quality small accommodation for those starting up and for those who had already been going for a few years and needed to move out of their back bedroom, or for those that were in rubbish accommodation in the city. And he wanted somewhere decent where they didn't have to worry about the quality of. They didn't have to worry about leaks, but importantly also they didn't have to worry about signing up to long leases. So we're actually providing leases on easy in, easy out terms, and that is a real bonus. And I think we get an awful lot of tenants because of that, because they're coming in and they're not really worried about having to sign up, like there would be in other instances, signing up to 6-year leases and the commitment that that provides. Having said that, one of the things with key lessons we have learned over the years is that if a tenant is with us for a few years, we then increase the length of notice required, because we were finding that tenants being with us for 5 years would turn around and give us a month's notice, which is not really reasonable. We did start also to in the beginning to stipulating that tenants had to employ local people, and made that a stipulation, but we soon had to sort of drop back from that, really, because we were requiring people to employ people that weren't around, that didn't have the skills, and frankly were just going to be a risk to the business. So we've stepped back from that, but we have tried to ensure that where tenants do recruit, that they try and recruit locally. In terms of the sort of total now, we have, as I say, about 60,000 square feet, and that equates to about 90 business units, and we have about 65 tenants with us, and we're lucky to operate at high occupation levels. The organisation has made a significant contribution to the local economy, and we've been in areas that have been without business units, and we now have manage about 13% of the business units in our area. So that's the area of Stonehouse, which is the area we set up to benefit. We manage 13% of the businesses that are now located within them. We've also been fortunate enough to generate a surplus in each of our years of trading. A huge amount of that went back into building a further asset, which was Stonley Court, and some of it now has gone back into a year-on-year project called Widening Horizons. which is the project which is aimed at working with schools, are 6 local primary schools, and that equates to about 100 children. The project works with Year 5 children, trying to link the world of education to the world of work. So we've made a commitment to supporting that now by having a permanent member of staff, and that is done solely using our services. Just to go back to the price and to the finance and business element of it, so I think that is an area that you're probably interested in if you're thinking about starting units. The price is very much determined by what we can achieve in Plymouth, and I guess everyone, you'll all have to make a judgment where you are as about what you can achieve, and certainly in some cities you'll be able to get higher rentals than others. It's a higher rental in Exeter and it's a higher rental level in Bristol, you'll not be surprised to learn. So we have to pitch it at Plymouth levels, and we've made a sort of decision not to be at the top end and not to be at the bottom end, but to be somewhere in the middle, and to have our unique selling point to be the quality of our services, the style of our lease, and the way that we respond to tenants' needs. They're the sort of things that we've tried to build our reputation on, and quite simply the quality of the units. And when we say that, they need to be light, clean, airy, and every time a tenant moves out, you need to maintain those sort of services. The price, we do charge VAT on top of the service of £8 or £9, and we chose to register for VAT, or we opted to register for VAT right at the beginning, simply because in our case we had a grant from the City Council which was charged with VAT, but we had to have VAT on it, and a rental which was charged with VAT. So we have it as a peppercorn rate, but that is that exchange, and because of that exchange we registered with VAT and opted to charge it. So therefore we charge it to our tenants as well. And whilst in the beginning one or two people said, oh, this is going to add a little bit to our costs, I don't really believe that it's actually prevented any of our anyone taking a unit with us at small cost. I know some people sort of think long and hard about this. Will it make a difference to us, and will it stop people coming in? But I don't believe it's really stopped anyone actually taking a tenancy with us. The only additional charges to us are the utility card charges. We don't add those to the rent. I know some people choose to. We don't add them to the rental figure. We always say the rental figure is with utility charges and business rates. We've managed to get all of our units considered as separate hereditaments, as business rates call them. That means for business rates purposes they are charged separately, and this is particularly useful as it means that if they're voids, you get a period of time to fill them again, and if it means you're not having to pass on the individual business rate to the whole building and pro rata it up. We don't have any additional service charges apart from that. We do try to include in the cost of our rent all of the things that are necessary to run the buildings, to take out of our core costs, cleaning, etc. We add those into the rent and then give the tenant the rental cost of it, rather than try to give them their rental figure and then, oh, by the way, it's this and this on top of it. Our own freehold, we in the HQ building, which you saw in the film, that was our second phase. We moved into there into 2001 on a 25-year lease, peppercorn lease from the City Council. And after 3 or 4 years of badgering the City Council about giving us a longer lease, we eventually persuaded them to give us the freehold in about 2007 at a cost of £1. And with that, and with our own recently built units, we have approximately £2.5 million worth of assets on our balance sheet. The purpose of trying to get hold of the HQ building was that we want to do our next phase. And so in many respects we're in a similar position to a lot of you, in that we're looking to start again to build a further business units, and we're wondering about how we can finance that, and whether we can, borrow. We can certainly borrow against this building, we can certainly borrow against our other asset, but we're still in that same position of looking at a business plan and looking about what we can get in terms of income, and what it's going to cost us to run, and what the critical mass of it is. And I know there's a sort of debate about what critical mass is, how many square feet do you need to run, really, and the answers to that question is really, what can you charge? What can you charge to make it, and what do you want to achieve out of it? Because those two questions are not necessarily going to give you the same answer. If we really wanted to achieve our highest incomes here, we could be unscrupulous and charge £14 a square foot like other people are charging, and maximise our income, but we would have a completely different set of tenants, and we would have a completely different set of operating. Now, there's no reason why you can't do that. You just need to be clear about what you want to achieve in the beginning, and whether the market can sustain that. And I would suspect that you're probably going to have a few more voids. And there's no reason why you have to have easy in, easy out leases either. If you wanted to go for a higher rental, there's no reason why you couldn't try and get somebody in on a longer lease for a longer period of time on a higher rental with a 5-10 year lease, which would give you one of the key security factors if you're looking to build or refurbish a building from scratch. So the size of the critical size of it is dependent on the rental levels that you can achieve, and that will depend on doing your market research, what sort of city you're in, and what sort of rental levels are being achieved, what sort of place are you in, or what sort of the voids rates that are around. We've also, because of the position of HQ, in terms of wanting to develop it, it's very much made us look at our focus in terms of what we want to achieve with our organisation, and therefore we've looked at our social return and how we can achieve through running business units improvements not only to the sort of local economy but to the area in terms of looking at the objectives that are also contained in our local strategic partnerships plan, in terms of here it's healthy, wealthy, safe and strong and wise. We've looked at how we can contribute to those sort of factors as well. I think I'm sort of more or less coming to the end of what I wanted to say about the organisation in terms of where we are now, and so I'm quite happy to break off and to take your questions, Vicky, if now is a good time to do so.
Great, Roger. Thanks very much. Fascinating for me. Within the Development Trust network, there are a number of managed workspaces. It is an area that we guess that we've learned a lot from through the network. Chris Hill is involved in the big managed workspace in North Leeds. I helped set one up here in Manningham, in Bradford. So we have a lot of comparative information around on this subject, and it's fascinating for me to hear the particular course that Roger has steered through some of the issues. I see some hands going up, and so I'll save more comment from me until a bit later. Giles, off you go.
Yes, that was a sort of fascinating sort of presentation, really, and something that we're looking to mirror very much so, using assets to generate the income for the future. The two things, or three things I just picked up on from the presentation is you're talking about sort of doing more business units, etc. The key thing on that is obviously is the demand still out there, because you can actually provide so much office space that actually you're going to have either have lots of empty units or have to reduce your prices. The second thing was regarding moving to charitable status. You were talking about using your assets to borrow against. Obviously, it's easy enough to put assets into a charity. From experience, I've found that actually trying to use assets within a charity, basically, you can't put those at risk, and therefore you may find that more complicated when you move into a charitable status. My third point, and final point, was regarding rent-free periods. We are having to offer some rent-free periods, and I was wondering, are you doing the same for your businesses? Thank you.
Thanks, Joss. Yeah. When will we know that there's too much around? Don't know. It's a good question. I mean, you obviously just have to. We play it a little bit by the number of inquiries we get, and we use now an online service. We've registered with instant offices. They used to be, I think they're just instant now. So you get quite a lot of our inquiries through them, and they take a percentage. So we're still getting quite a good number of inquiries, and we're still getting good conversion rates. So they're sort of, if you've got a little history of that, then you need, you can keep a record of that, and it'll tell you, whether you're still, a serious player or not. Somebody once said to me, if you're good at your business, there's enough business, and that might not strictly be true, but I think there's an element of truth in that. So if you're good enough, then you really should be confident enough to, to stick with your business model. And it's competitive out there, and you have to recognise it's competitive, and be in competition with people. We're still in a position in Plymouth where we know there's still a lot of rubbish around that's being charged a lot of money for. So if we're in competition with them, well, so be it, really. But we also want to provide a home a better home for some of our tenants who are with us. One of our buildings not ideal. We think it's got a shelf life. So in terms of our own economic planning, our own risk and plan, we do need to start thinking about how we improve that accommodation. Charitable status. I mean, it's a really good point, and I probably would appreciate a discussion with you about perhaps offline about this, because we have and ahed about it for an awful long time, and eventually we have made a decision to look at charitable status. And I know that other people doing similar things across the country have got charitable status. We need to, obviously, to explore all the options before we eventually stick in our application. And your third point about rent-free levels, that was it. We do offer some rent-free periods, but not generally more than a month, maybe 2 months. It depends how hard people negotiate, really. But I think we don't really go beyond it, and we certainly don't offer it unless it's maybe somebody from our local area who we think's a start-up, or we particularly want to get that company in, but we don't really go much beyond that. And I think the other thing we should say is, I put it in my tips here, is we don't offer. We're really hot on managing rent payments as well. We don't tolerate bad debts. And I know Hugh asked me at the beginning about what point do you need a financial robust, financial, perhaps a dedicated person. Well, the sooner the better, really. You don't need an accountant, but you need somebody. If you've got 10,000 square feet of accommodation and 15 different tenants, you do need somebody who's monitoring that on a day-to-day basis, and not just to make sure that your finances are okay, but to monitor things, to monitor the monthly rent payments.
Hi Roger, it's Chris. Fantastic track record, really jealous, very good. There's lots of nerdy little questions I want to ask you, Roger, but I'll try and confine myself to the big philosophical ones. Just 3 really. I'm on Unity Enterprise, which is a housing association. Their board, and they run about 60,000 square foot of rent of workspace, and they're sort of fullish, they're on one's 80%, the other 2% places are 90%, yet they're just breaking even. And that's frankly because of this rent level issue. And they were created to create cheap workspace for startups in a, who aren't wealthy startups, which was entirely reasonable. But in Leeds, and I suspect Plymouth, the world's changed, and actually those startups can get cheap space. And is it better to charge as big a rent the market can take and use the surpluses in an interesting way? So that's one question. Second question is, you don't seem to do any sort of meeting room conferencing stuff. I know at Shine it's phenomenally more profitable to do that, just without pouring stats all over it. When we're fully let in the sort of 30,000 square foot, that produces only a similar amount to using the 2,500 square foot of meeting space when that's only being used 20–25% of the time. So I'm interested your thoughts about doing conferencing and meeting space. And third and final, I'll get off quickly, is this what's it all for question. I was very interested you working with the schools, and I see from your plan that you're going to have the sort of community centre idea. But I know we desperately sort of flog these places, I'm talking about myself now, to try and make a surplus. And yes, you're creating jobs and so on in disadvantaged areas. But there's got to be so much more, hasn't there? And I'm interested in your thoughts on the sort of community return angle. Thanks very much, Roger.
Chris, thanks. Good questions. You've got 60,000 square feet and good occupation levels, yet you can't. You're not making significant surplus. I think probably there's two things worth looking at. This is stating the obvious. One is your rental level. It sounds to me as if you're a bit low. And one way to change that would be to, as people move out, begin to put the rental levels up, or little by little put them up each year. It does sound like you're a bit low, and I think you're probably offering them some very. It'd be interesting to see how many, what your turnover of tenants is. If it's low, then it's telling you that it's low, I would suggest, because I think people would, sounds like they've got a good deal and they're sticking with it. And the other thing is obviously look at your costs, really. What's it costing you to run them? I think one of my top tips is go for new builds if you've got the options, and go for independent units, because they're actually really cost us very little in terms of to run, in terms of management. They cost us next to nothing in terms of management time. We do as they get older, they cost you a bit more to run in terms of maintenance, but relatively low in terms of what you get in. So they're our bread and butter, and they make us quite a lot of money. So have a look at those things I would suggest. In terms of commons, I didn't mention commons, but I should have done, because it does. We do generate. It does in the balanced scorecard financial return generate last year around about nearly £30,000 worth of income from conference rooms. We've got two about 700 square feet conference rooms, so you see that they're quite well used. This year you can see that we're only aiming for 25,000, because the conference, we're finding we're getting less bookings for that size of conference facility. I don't know if you're experiencing the same, Chris, whether it's the bigger stuff is the one that people want now, but I think a lot of our people that were using them have cut back and have looked at what they're spending they're spending in terms of conference, and got, well, we can, we're meeting for 10, 15 people, we can squash them all into our our spare room here, rather than go and have a meeting room out. So it depends. I'm very much looking at that sort of size. People can't squash 30 people into it, so that sort of thing. Maybe need to research as to the type of conference facilities that are going, and ones that are being well used, because I suspect the smaller ones people will be cutting costs on it. The other thing about conference rooms is the management cost of it. It does take quite a lot of managing in. You got every day you got to go in and make sure that it's clean, tidy, that you've got enough, teas, coffees, etc. You got to book in and if you're not taking a cost on terms of the sandwiches, etc. If you're doing that, it can support a little cafe, but if not, then you're doing quite a lot of admin for quite a lot, not necessarily a lot of return. So that's the other thing you need to watch in it. What's it all for? It's a really good question, and we wrestled with that all the time here. And I think, is it maximum return and then using the surplus? Well, it could well be, but I would think that there is enough opportunity and there's enough scope in most instances to do good through what you do, and at the same time do good with your surplus. So, if you set up the ethos, we don't have people here that are doing anything other than private business, but we speak to them, we try to get them sort of involved in the trust, whether it be playing football with us at night, or whether it be simply helping us out, doing little jobs with us. We try to get people sort of involved in it, really, and get people signed up to the idea that they're actually part of something which is more than just a profit-seeking organisation. So I think you can do it in those little ways, through people then employing locally, making small contributions to the economy, trading locally, using local businesses. I think you can, both through what you do and in terms of generating surplus, do it. And I think, for us, it's about having a base from, foundations from which to build your house. And the bigger the foundations, the bigger the house, the more you can do. If we were in a position of generating hundreds of thousands, which we want to be, we can then do more strategic work in terms of investment into our community that will address the long-term problems associated with our area.
Akila, I've taken the microphone away. You are absolutely silent, I'm afraid. Do you want to just try once more?
Hi, it's Akila Chowdhury. Please let me know if you can hear me. I'm sorry about this.
You're fine, Akila. It's always just as a quick note to everyone, if you're a bit unsure whether we can hear you, people will press the green tick button or maybe the kind of slightly confused face button, so don't worry about putting it down and waiting for someone to say yes. Just keep an eye on the participant window. So off you go, Akila.
Okay, hi. Thank you, Roger. A few questions. One is that, can you talk a bit more about the consultancy income that you're hoping to generate? Secondly, how long did it take for you to convince the local authority to actually sell the property to you? And what kind of individuals did you access to influence that achievement? And what kind of skills base did your team have at the outset, and what's the key skills base needed for a successful trust? Thank you.
Hi Akila, thanks for your questions. Consultancy is mostly through the DTA pool, and it's mostly using the experience of running managed workspace, so it's sort of quite narrow in that, or running assets, so that although I've done a little bit of work also for an organisation down here that's looking to become a development trust and looking at their business plan as well. So that's the aspiration through the consultancy. How long did it take us to persuade the city council? Well, the short answer is I suppose it took us about 2 or 3 years, but we have a track record going beyond that, which meant that they trusted us when we entered into those discussions. And the key people for us were asset management, and I guess it's not the same for everyone with the same departments, but we had an asset management department here that we managed to persuade. And then we had a window of opportunity because we were coming up to a council election, and we had a Labour administration here which sort of, I think, felt it was not going to win the next election locally. So we talked to the leader for quite a while, and we managed to persuade him that it was a good thing to do, and he really drove it forward, and banged a few heads together to get it moving. So I think really it's no short answer as you would probably expect. You'll need to speak to people all around the council, councillors, people at offices, and start with the ones that you meet on a day-to-day basis, and then work your way up. So yeah, it's about just networking generally and trying to show people. I think one of the key things for us is that we were not just trying to say to them that we want it for because we'd like it, but we actually want it because we want to use it to further develop services to this area. I will say a bit about hot desking as well. I'm just reading that. The skills base. What do we need? You need somebody you need a finance person to keep on top of everything. You need somebody who's really good at that, and somebody who you can trust to say, give me the projections if this happens, if that happens. You need a risk plan as well for particularly for managing business units. You need to know what the situation is if you have, a percentage of voids and that slips down. What happens to it? What happens to your cash flow? What happens to your revenue? As opposed to your expenses. So you need a risk analysis based on occupation levels. You need somebody who's really good at customer management as well. And the particular skills we have here is that we've got somebody who's really very good at liaising and letting our units. So if we've got a void, we're very quick to try and fill that void, and more often than not we do it. And it's about being really persistent. It's about having good networks. It's not necessarily about huge marketing. It's about having good networks, and it's about following up those networks, and it's about closing things as well by being conscientious, really. So if somebody inquires, you make sure that you send them the information when you said you were going to send it, and you follow it up, but not in a pushy way. And you're polite and honest, really, I suppose, and straightforward to people. And keeping good records of inquiries, so that you send people out stuff you might have inquired a year ago, but they might be in a position to take something now. Keep good records, send out general stuff to people, and keep good records of numbers of inquiries, where they've come from, that sort of stuff. And you need somebody to obviously oversee all that. You need somebody to look at where you're going next, and are people performing, and all that sort of stuff. Hot desks, I'll say a little bit about them. They've not generally worked down here, and we've now got and I can say that with a bit of confidence, even though we've not done it, because there are a number of us who meet providers who workspace providers. There's I think 6 of us that meet who have business parks across the city. Only one of them's working really who's had hot desks, and that's in the university. And I think that's probably because of a number of reasons. Not one is because they're bang slap in the middle of the city, and another is because they get a lot of students, and another is because of a bit I think because of their reputation. But others have found that hot desks haven't really worked, and they've got rid of them. So hopefully that's. Oh, do we have any borrowings that you want read? And what rates do you get? We do have a borrowing. So we borrow. We built our own 10,000 square feet business centre. We borrowed 360,000 on a mortgage from the NatWest at 1% above base. So we're doing really well on that at the moment. And that's on a 25-year mortgage, and it's repaid solely on the income that we get from that unit, and we still make a surplus.
Hello Roger, thank you very much. Congratulations on a really excellent business model and very clear plans for development and growth. I'm particularly interested in organisational development in 2012 on your balanced scorecard. Presumably this is to reflect your growth. As my organisation is in a similar situation, having to think about new structures. And within this, I'm interested in your plans to develop a strategy for recruiting directors. How do you propose to do this, and what particular skills are you looking for, and why? And will you look first for them in your internal team, or will you be looking for skills outside? Thanks very much.
Hi Chris, thanks for your question. Our directors, just to be clear, are all our management committee. They're all volunteers, so they're all drawn from our community, and we have a system of membership where anyone in our local community can become a member, and any member can become director. And I think what we've realised is that people aren't necessarily interested in running business units, so we need to be much more proactive about getting people in, but also much more proactive in making sure that we get people with the right skills and not just rely on people coming forward from that process which don't necessarily give you the right skills on the board. So it's a bit about managing upwards as well as managing downwards. So I think the strategy that we're going to look at is to have people locally involved in some sort of capacity with the trust, whether it be using them to help us run a couple of ideas and projects that we've got as volunteers, all the way through to people forming, sitting on subgroups. We're going to have a project management system, sitting on subgroups, interest groups. We're looking at the Palace Theatre. Hopefully we're going to get, Vicky knows about this, hopefully we're going to get a number of people involved in projects like that, and from them, then work with people to, give them the confidence and look at what skills areas they might need support in, so that they're ready then to come on to the board, rather than have people then suddenly we've got an election. If you've won the election and you're put forward onto the board. Hope that answers your question, Chris.
Hi, I'm going to jump in, Andy. I can see you've got a question, but I think we really need to move to breakout rooms now. So I'm going to move everyone into breakout rooms. I'm going to set the timer going for 15 minutes. Keep your eye on it. After 15 minutes when the timer zeros, I shall bring everyone back to the main room and we'll feed back. I'm going to try something slightly different with the technology. I'm going to try the one-click move everyone to breakout rooms, and then I'm going to move the moderators into specific rooms. So it'll take a minute or so to get things sorted out. So see everyone in breakout rooms shortly. And Roger, I shall put you in one of the breakout rooms and hope that you can answer a few questions when you're there. Hello everyone, we are back in the main room. I hope that wasn't too abrupt. Hope you all had time to ask some questions and really get to the bottom of the issues around managed workspace, perhaps learn a little bit more about the Millfields Trust. I'm going to suggest that we take a few minutes just to feedback now from each of the rooms, just to not feedback on everything that we've spoken about, but just a few key points, a few issues that you found particularly interesting. So we're going to start off with Hugh's group. Hugh?
Thanks, Vicky. Difficult somehow to get conversation going about this subject, don't know why. Joanne has a question about charitable status, and one, Roger, from me. Can you talk about grant funding that you've had in the past and any aspects of clawback relating to that, and how, if at all, that limits your balance sheet? Let Joanne also ask her question and then deal with them both, if you would, at the same time. Joanne?
Hi, Roger. I was just interested that for so many years you've been going without charitable status, and then you've now going this year for it. And I wonder whether that's because you're getting more involved in the school's work, or whether you're just changing the focus of the surplus that you're making and how you're spending that.
Hi, thanks, Hugh. Firstly, grant funding. What grant funding have we had? Well, when we took over the buildings, we were fortunate enough that they'd had grants in terms of capital costs on it, so there wasn't any liability for us. We just had the buildings good and clean. We do get a grant from the City Council for 3 of our buildings, for which they charge us a rent exactly the same amount, so in effect it's a peppercorn. The other grant that does affect us, which has a clawback on it, which you've referred to, is that there was a capital cost, capital loan given by the RDA for the refurbishment of the HQ building, which was given to the City Council but was transferred, the liability was transferred to us when we took over the freehold of it. And I don't think there's a will for the RDA to enforce it, but obviously it does appear as a liability on our balance sheet. And you know, we can talk about that later in more detail if you're interested. But I think we're working with the RDA to get that one removed. Joanne, why are we looking for charitable registration? Well, because this year we are paying about £25,000 worth of corporation tax, and that just seems really crazy. You know, when we could actually be reinvesting that back into our community, and we could be, you know, perhaps even putting additional, you know, support staff into the local schools. When you see a figure like that and you can equate it to a salary, then it just seems really daft that we would, you know, give £25,000 away, really.
I'm just jumping in. Could Andy ask his related question about asset locks now?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Yeah, in our breakout room I asked a question. It was very relevant, and it was basically to do with your legal structure, because you said that you're a company limited by guarantee, and I was wondering what kind of safeguards are there so that investors believe that I don't know, directors aren't going to pay themselves a fortune, or that you could suddenly change the objectives of the organisation and move into something completely different that's less social enterprisey. Because from what I can see, a lot of what you do is run as a company. Yeah, so I'm interested to know a bit more about that. Thank you.
Andy, you're right. There's no asset lock. The thing that determines how the trust behaves is its memorandum and articles, and that at the moment stipulates that we have a membership which is open to anyone in our area of benefit over the age of 17, and that any member is entitled to stand to election to the board. So, in theory, there could be, you know, a group of people come along and say, right, who are really interested, right, we're going to, you know, stand for election, we're going to vote ourselves onto the board, and we're going to change the constitution, etc. So, in theory, we are open to that. I mean, the only lock that we have, and it's not really a lock at all, is that, you know, our memorandum and articles state that if we go out of business, then our assets go to a similar organisation in Stonehouse. So that's the only, you know, the only thing that preserves the status of this company is the will of this community, I guess.
Hugh, is there anything else you wanted to mention before we move on to Chris and Yao's group?
I suppose just that last point, an awful lot of this seems to me to be based on the quality of the relationship that Roger and colleagues have managed to build with Plymouth City Council. And it does go to show that sometimes, you know, the legal form, you know, the lack of a completely nailed down asset lock can be outweighed by a quality of relationship. And obviously there's a trusted, you know, now fairly seasoned partnership here. In general, the asset lock is important, and clearly the other point around the charitable status is if you are in the fortunate position to be making substantial surpluses and begin to incur corporation tax, then charitable status is really worth looking at it. I would have to say that for many years, Carlisle Business Centre operated under a letter from the Revenue saying, although we weren't a charitable company, because we were reinvesting all our surpluses in the local community, they deemed that we were not due for corporation tax. Subsequently, we've had different advice and have had to look to manage our surpluses every year so that we don't incur a corporation tax liability. But hand on to the next group.
Hi, it's Naomi. I just grabbed the mic because I also had wanted to come back to the charitable status issue, because somebody mentioned concerns about trading, with charitable status. Keystone Development Trust in Thetford do everything that they do onto their charitable status, including managed workspace conferencing, everything, and say that to date they've had no problems with the Charities Commission. So I think that's an interesting one to look at if you're worried about that.
That's great. Thanks. Thanks very much, Naomi. Chris, Hill, and Yao, have you got a couple of points that you wanted to feed back?
Yeah,
maybe Yao. I couldn't hear you at all, Chris. You sounded like some kind of strange Dalek.
Yeah, you're a bit fuzzled there, Chris. I think our group had the benefits of Carol from Hastings Trust in our group, where sort of they've been sort of going for 20 years, and we talked mainly sort of about the relationships actually between themselves and their clients, their tenants, and how many of those are actually third sector organisations themselves. And regarding to get sort of balance right with regards to meeting the business model and sort of social return, we talked about what you could do perhaps to support these organisations, and offering business support was one of the things that was talked about, and that sort of Hastings trusted, and also about having clear relationships from the start, so that we feel sort of can deal with sort of any sort of conflicts in the future. Carol, do you have anything else to add on that? I don't seem to be able to sort of get the notes on the screen. Let's see. Yep, here they are. So, Carol?
It doesn't sound like Carol had anything to add, so I'm just going to jump in because I'm conscious of the time. You can see the notes that I brought in from our breakout room. They're a little bit small. One of the things that we spoke about was about the possibility of the local community having a role in discussing quite how the surpluses that Millfields generate is spent. And Roger suggested that perhaps the City Council could do a similar thing with participatory budgeting, which is a very interesting question, a very interesting issue, and there's an opportunity perhaps for people to invest in Millfields, to invest in their local trust. We spoke about marketing, and I want to know quite how far afield Roger marketed, if indeed he did marketing. He said he doesn't really do much direct marketing, but tends to pay for searches to come up well on Google, and to do a lot of PR, work. So advertising the workspace whilst at other events, articles in the paper mentioning at launches, that kind of thing, and using a broker who takes a month's rental as fee. Are there any other questions at the moment? If not, I'm going to suggest that we go to a break. But of course, to say thank you very much to Roger. It's been fantastic having you here. And just perhaps over to Carol briefly, who seems to have something to add.
Hi, yeah, sorry Vicky, I'm not quite sure what's going on with technology. I thought I was sort of in mid-flow. Anyway, I just wanted to say in answer to the question earlier that I didn't want things to sound too pessimistic, but it is crucial to get your agreements right from the start so that you avoid any sort of problems as things go on for yourself.
Hi, Roger's here. Sorry, I just wanted to respond to Carol's point, and which is about agreement and having a voluntary sector. And I think one of the top tips I've given is that you can do that. What you need to be clear of is really what you want to achieve out of with managed workspace. So I think if you're clear that you want to generate a certain amount of income, then within that you can be flexible about who you want in and the type of arrangements that you want with them. And I would agree with Carol's point that you actually must get those nailed down right at the beginning.
If I could just jump in here as a final comment before we go for a break, perhaps. It does seem to me that Millfields has a very interesting history in terms of creating a very solid long-term platform. And I think it begs the question for a number of people. If you want to do good stuff in your neighborhood, you need to be planned to be around for a certain amount of time, and you need to probably get to a certain scale in order to have an impact. And it looks to me as if Millfields, with 60,000 square foot under management, is now in a very stable position, and it is much easier then to do some of the social work, including now funding a member of staff to work with schools, for instance. And so sometimes, if you focus too much on your social objectives right from the outset, you are not necessarily going to build that kind of long-term platform that you need to ensure that your social impact endures over the long period of time. There is also within managed workspace some tendency to say, let's specialize, let's go for social enterprise, let's go for creative and digital industries or that kind of thing. I'm not sure, except in the very biggest cities, that strategy necessarily works, and in order to hit those critical occupancy levels, you probably need to be fairly Catholic in terms of your thinking about tenancy. Unless, of course, there is access to an overwhelming grant. If you can get a substantial grant from the Arts Council to set up a creative managed workspace, it may be worth it. And there are some examples of specialist managed workspace working quite well, but as I say, they tend to be in the more vibrant economic cities. If you're talking about poorer neighborhoods, then I think you probably need to do the things that I think Roger's done, get your basic size of unit right, and spread your risk by taking private, social enterprise, and public sector tenants. And it's interesting, actually, as a final reflection from me, that Roger doesn't seem to have done what many people have done, which is secure anchor tenants from the public sector. I'm sure we need a break now. Vicky, are you going to tell us when we need, how long we've got?